Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the updates 1.95 dev server, and it's time to have a look at the new ships which are coming to the game in updates 1.95. There's actually a lot of ships being added, which is really nice to see. There's a lot of destroyers filling out that 4.0 to 5.0 area, so hopefully, the destroyers can now have their own BR instead of being smashed in the face by cruisers. This is the first one of the bunch which is being added. It's a rank 3 battle rating 4.3 destroyer in the form of the Porter DD356. This machine has 4 dual-mounted 5-inch guns. Also, it has 2 sets of quad 1.1-inch guns that you can see right here and also back here. It also has 2 dual-mounted 12.7mm AN-M2s as well in the center right here, and 16 torpedoes which come in sets of 4. So you have a set of 4 here, a set of 4 here, totaling 8 that you can fire at the same time, and then it has a secondary reload of torpedoes that you can see mounted around here. So basically both sets of these will have access to 8 torpedoes, but you will have to reload them. Also, it has 2 smokestacks which lead to a bunch of engines and also transmissions at the bottom, but look at the amount of ammunition that is sat under these massive, 5 inches. 2,880 rounds of ammunition, and also some really lovely modeled ammo elevators, may I just say. They are just, it's always stunning when it comes to ships how well they look. The DD356 here also gets access to a bunch of HE shells, but no AP, as you can see. So it has HE, then common shell HE, then of course you have the special common shell, and then you have another special common shell. Now, what is interesting about these shells, or at least, it has also the HEVT shell. What is interesting about these shells is the first one only pens 36, and then these commons actually pen quite a lot. 121, 108, 44, and this one also is 148, 119, and 51. So even though it only has access to these HE shells, the HE shells themselves pen a ton. So you're going to be doing a lot of damage with them and also being able to penetrate whatever you're firing at. Now, generally destroyers don't have a ton of armor when it comes to them, and the Porter is no different. It has 12.7mm of a belt, and that's about it. It's got a little bit around the bridge and also a little bit around the guns, but nothing to write home about. 194 crew as well on this destroyer, which is nice to see, and I would say it's a solid addition to the US fleet. You can see it also here, so you will have to research it to get to the SOMAs. So if you want the SOMAs, this is the time to research it. Get it now before the Porter is put in. The next 2 vehicles are one premium and one non-premium for the Germans. We have access, of course, to the largest cannons in the game now when it comes to the Germans. The Admiral Graf Spee is now been added to the game. It has 2 sets of triple-mounted 280mm, of course 8 150mm on either side of this grand superstructure. Then, of course, it has 3 sets of dual-mounted 105mm, 4 sets of dual-mounted 37s, and 14 20s. So you're not getting away from this machine if you're an AA vehicle, and the 280mm should put a hell of a big hole in whatever ship they are firing at. It also has access to some other stuff, such as torpedoes on the back, 8 of them in total, so that gives you a little bit of leeway when it comes to what and how you want to approach attacking ships. It also is the first rank 5 ship for the Germans. You can see it right here, and it is labeled a heavy cruiser. It has a crew of 1,175, which is actually less than the Admiral Hipper class ships, and a lot less than the Prince Eugen. So yeah, even though it's got larger guns, its survivability is not larger. It does have access to 40mm of a belt, and 100mm belt with 40mm around it, and then around the turrets it has 125mm. So in order to penetrate, the ammunition areas, you're going to need a decent amount of penetration to get to them. And those ammunition areas, once again, beautifully modeled, and they're also huge. So you can see you got the charge storage here, and then the ammunition storage at the bottom. So they're actually splitting them up now now, so if you hit, the inert parts, I'm guessing you won't explode. So that's kind of nice. It also has the wonderful fuel tanks, which you find on pretty much every German ship, which act as an extra layer of armor. And yes, they will cause a lot of fires, but at the end of the day, you'd rather have a fire than be dead. And there's also just a bunch of ammunition just sat here. Plus, look how crazy these smoke funnels are. Do you see how they're all connected in such odd ways to what look like incredibly small engines for this machine with a lot of space between them? And there is actually 4 funnels. Well, actually, it's 4 sets of funnels which all lead into one big smoke funnel in the center. So it's going to be easy to take this out and slow the machine down considerably, but at the same time, actually taking out the engines themselves, they're incredibly spread out. So I think going for these juicy little elevators right here is the way to go. It also has some armor around the bridge, not a lot, 150 around this area, and also 20 millimeters and 18 over here as well. Modifications wise, you have some HE to start with, 80 millimeters worth of pen, so it's good enough, but it's not the best. It's not going to penetrate a bunch of the heavy cruisers that you're going to fight. And then you have APC BC, which pens over 500, so yeah, that deals with the penetration issue. And then 470 on this machine. The round I think a lot of people are going to use is this one, the semi-armor piercing ballistic cap shell. It pens a little bit less, but it also has triple the amount of explosive filler. Well, not triple the amount, about 1.5 times. No, 2.5 times the amount of explosive filler. So that's the one to go for. That's the one that's going to do the most damage with this machine. And I'm also going to demonstrate something with this machine as well, just to kind of show you some interesting new effects that have been added to Naval when it comes to firing the guns and also when it comes to doing damage. So if you saw the ground vehicle video, you will have seen that there is some sparks which have been added to the game when you shoot your guns and also when you shoot the enemy. Well, imagine when it comes to Naval, you have much larger guns. Ooh, calm down. You have much larger guns, so therefore you're going to have much larger sparks. So what we can see is if we just line the guns up, we'll do some firing. You can see the wonderful sparks that come out of these massive 280 millimeters, and of course just put quite large holes in that ship over there. And they also spark when they hit. So there is just really, it's just a really cool situation that we have here. Oh my God, that's an unfortunate end to that ship there. But we'll do it again once we have a reload on this machine. One of the problems with this machine is the reload is nearly 30 seconds on it, so you do have to obviously pick your battles wisely, and you don't want to run out of ammunition, anytime soon. So this is what it looks like once again. Looks beautiful. You can see the shells going in. Obviously the shells splash as well. And, oh God. Okay, we hit the ammunition and made it go pop. So these 280s are going to be incredibly fun to use, may I just say. So the next vehicle, which is on offer, which is also German, is the Prinz Eugen. Now the Prinz Eugen sits as a 5.7 rank 4 machine. It is also a premium, so you get some nice premium bonuses with it, such as you don't have to gain any of the modifications, and it has exactly the same main guns as the Hipper that we have in the tree. So it has 4 sets of dual-mounted 203s, 6 sets of dual-mounted 105s, 18 40 millimeters, 6 20 millimeters, which are quad mounted, and then 2 sets of dual mounted 20 millimeters as well, plus 22 torpedoes. So this thing is not mucking around when it comes to its ammunition options. They are just everywhere. It has pretty much everything you would ever need from a machine, plus it has the best survivability of any machine when it comes to the Germans. This is going to be a meta vehicle. There is no two ways about it. It has everything you would need from a machine. 80 millimeters of belt. It has 100 millimeters. Well, sorry, it has 40 millimeters below it, but it doesn't really have a ton here in this area, so you can definitely shoot down into the ammunition, kind of like how you can do on the Hipper, but once again has this wonderful fuel belt and also some areas which you can't penetrate because it has armor between them. So yeah, it's very similar to the Admiral Hipper, apart from it has more guns on it in the form of secondary armaments, and also has way more crew. So this is just a better Admiral Hipper class. Oh, sorry, Admiral Hipper in the tree. If you really want to terrorize opponents, you bring this, and you also bring, of course, the Grafspee, and do a ton of damage with it. So what I want to just show you real quick is the is what the guns look like, and we'll focus it on the aircraft, which is around the area, just to, you know, give it a how's your father. So it's just insane how much air defenses this thing has, and that is just one small section of the Prince Eugen. You can see all of the beautiful traces from this machine. There is nothing surviving that. It's as simple as that. And now let's just change it to a ship, so you know they can all attack that. Look how ridiculous that is. Like nothing is surviving. It's just not going to happen. You will not be able to get close to this machine if you're a small ship. It's just something that will not happen. You also have, of course, the secondaries on the side as well. You can see the wonderful sparks from them. And also, you know, the sparks from the 203s look really nice as well. So, yeah, get used to having a look at some really nice effects in Naval alongside ground. And there's also some in air as well when it comes to sparking, but it's not as prevalent just because, well, you don't do as much damage. So, yeah. The Eugen, in my opinion, is going to be the meta vehicle for the updates, along with the Helena. It's just going to have insane amounts of secondaries, and also, obviously, main guns. Really, really good ship. And much better than the Grafspee just because of the reload. The Soviets don't get anything, apart from something that I can show you, which is kind of nice. There is a few machines that have been added to the game, which have access to radar. And one of them is the PR-35. The new Isuzu from the Japanese also has access to this radar. It is only for aircraft though. So as you can see on the radar here, we do have it tracking this machine. And it also does like the little box thing that you can do. I just can't remember what I have it set up for in this, in this machine. But you can see that it does track, it does follow, and it does create the box if you wanted to. So yeah, it's the ships that in real life had access to radar when it came to spotting aircraft are also going to have access to it in game now. So the radar system is being moved not just in air, not just in ground, but now it is available in naval, and I think that's absolutely awesome. Seeing more of these systems being used in different places, in my opinion, is wonderful. You know, that's what we want to see from War Thunder. We want to see everything get access to the same mechanics, as long as, you know, it makes sense to. But unfortunately, the Soviets don't get any ships. Now, the British actually get 4 ships, and they're all destroyers, and they're all really nice, because some of them are 4.0, so they miss out really on that cruiser area, and also, you know, they have some quite nice guns on them. This is the Hunt L71. It has access to 3 dual-mounted 4-inch guns. It has a quad 40 on it in the center right here, and also 2 sets of dual-mounted 20mm Oerlikons. It also has 2 20mm Oerlikons on top of that, so you do have a little bit of extra AA defense. But for me, I'm looking forward to this destroyer just because of the fact that it gets to be a destroyer instead of a machine that's going to get eaten by its, you know, cruiser counterparts. It definitely isn't as strong as other destroyers, only having 3 sets of dual-mounted 4 inches. They're not the best guns. Some machines even have them as secondaries when they're destroyers. But for me, you know, it has access to this HE to start with, which has a lot of HE in it. Then you have, of course, the SAP, which gives you the penetration, and of course the HEDF as well, which will help you a little bit more. It does get access to a bomb mortar as well, which I believe is on the back. Yeah, you can see it right here, so it can launch stuff off of it. But it's just, you know, your very simple destroyer. Doesn't have a ton of crew, doesn't have a ton of stuff to it. Instead, what it has is depth charges and some pretty good fast firing main guns, because obviously the smaller the guns are, the easier they are to reload, so you can get more bang for your buck when it comes to these machines. The difference between the Hunt L71 and the L79 is, as you can see, a difference in 40mm and a difference in secondary armaments. So the main armament stays the same. They are the 4-inch, or they are 3 dual-mounted sets of the 4 inches or the Mark 16s. So right here, and obviously right here. So 2 sets on the back, 1 set on the front. But then it gets access to the 40mm Mark 2C. Which is right here, so it's in the same position, just a different mounting when it comes to the 40mm, and then it has 4 sets of dual 20mm, so it gains 2 20mm, and it also gains 3 torpedoes right in the center of it right here. So for me, obviously they are the same BR. This one is just better than the L71. It has more crew, it has more survivability, it has more guns, it has pretty much everything that is better than it. So yeah, that is... This is obviously going to be the first one that you take, and it's known also, this one is the HMS Brissenden, and the first one is the HMS Calp, which is some very interesting names. I like both of them. They're both 4.0, so it means that I'm going to run them in a lineup. And the next one is the K-Class. So the K-Class is, once again, a machine that has access to some larger guns, meaning that it goes up to 4.3. It has access to 3 dual-mounted 4.7 inches or 45 Mark 12 cannons in the CP-XIX mountings, and they have 1,200 rounds of ammunition each, with a lot of ammunition in the front. And since this thing really doesn't have a lot of armor, that is going to be a very juicy target to shoot at. It also has access to a quad-mounted 40mm once again in the center, which is obviously the same as the Hunts, and also 2 quad mountings of the 12.7s, which you can find in this configuration right here, in the vertical configuration, instead of the horizontal. Then 10 torpedoes, which is actually really nice. As somebody who really loves using torpedoes, for me having 10 of them is kind of a godsend, because I like to play arcade, I like to, reload my torpedoes. Overall, I'm very happy to see that many torpedoes when it comes to this machine. The other thing as well is it pens 35, 35, 35 with a lot more explosive filler than the Hunt guns, and also 127 with the SAP, and of course it has the HEDF as well. The bomb mortar is also available on this machine, meaning that it does get access to some depth charges if you want, but it only gets access to 2 of them. So yeah, you're going to have to use them wisely because you only get 2. I actually can't see where they are on this machine. I'm just going to test drive it so I can see where those wonderful depth charges are. Maybe one day depth charges will have a reason to exist. I'm still waiting for it. In my opinion, it doesn't exist yet. But let's just see. So if we do that, oh, there we go. Whee! Gotta love the good old bomb mortar. Now, of course, you have the 12.7s firing, the little guns there, and you have the quad 40mm just to open up on any target it feels like. It is centrally mounted, so you can definitely get away from it if you're a plane. It's not something that, will just end you. Then that one was the HMS Kelvin, and now we get on to the Australian machine. This is the HMAS Tobruk, or the Majesty's Australian service, or I believe that's what it is. And yeah, you can see it has 2 dual mountings of 4.5 inches, 3 dual mountings of 40mm, and 6 40mm all over it, with once again 10 wet torpedoes. So a lot of AA cover for this machine at 4.3. Main armament is kind of lacking since it is only just the 2 turrets, but it does mean that you can go towards your enemies and be able to keep all of your main guns on targets, which is nice, and it's also a very fast machine. So it does have a lot going for it. It is obviously the post-war battle class. It doesn't get access to depth charges, but it does get access to clips for the 40mm. So if you wanted to be more useful at killing either machines such as ships or machines such as planes, planes, you can choose, you know, what you want. For me, this AA armament is completely scary. You know, you have, what, 9 plus 6, you have 15 40mm on this thing, and for a destroyer of 4.3, that's incredibly good. The main armament is just not really great. The Isuzu is a rank 2 machine, and it's being sat at 4.0. You can see it's after the Chikugo right now. On the dev server, it is 270,000 RP. So definitely expensive. It would be nice if that was lowered. I'm sure it will be at some point. But it does get access to these Mark 46 torpedoes right here. Only 4 of them, though. And obviously the main guns being the 2 dual-mounted sets of the 3 inches, which you should be familiar with on the Chikugo. The fire rate on these guns is just insane. You know, you're looking at a fire rate of 35 rounds per minute, first stage fire rate of 50 rounds per minute. It's just incredibly good. And it also gets this nice little addition as well, the 320mm Mark 108 Weapon Alpha anti-submarine rocket. So we don't have submarines in the game, but you can still use this thing to great effect. This thing also has 183 crew, so being a frigate, it actually has more crew than some of the destroyers out there. And if you have a look at the rocket which is available, you can see that it's a 320mm caliber with a large projectile mass. The explosive mass as well is 113 kilograms, and it has a 0.1mm fuse sensitivity. When I tested this, it seemed a little bit odd, because it definitely seemed like it was trying to guide in on stuff. And something as well is you can bring depth charges, but you have to not bring the rockets. So I've got a feeling nobody is going to bring the depth charges, which is kind of sad for it, but you know, I mean, it happens when it comes to the Isuzu. So let's just bring the rockets and also bring the Ruckus with the Isuzu. It also gets access to radar, which is nice, you know, especially with the main guns that it has. So it is able to donk on aircraft as they come about. You know, with these really fast-firing guns, you can see how fast they fire. Incredibly good for, you know, the position that they're in. The problem is this is at the same BR as destroyers, so that definitely isn't very kind to us. But you can see here, if we target this machine and we fire the rockets, you can see how it goes up, it follows, and then it's like goes down onto the target. Now, I'm not sure whether that's targeted or not. Like, is it targeted from when it's fired? Because you cannot control it in the air. So I'm wondering if you have to target a machine and then fire it, and then it just follows the course trajectory that, you know, you have from targeting it. But with a machine like this machine, you know, if we target it right here, what it does, if the rocket can actually shoot, let's just set it up like this, there we go. If the rocket can shoot, so we have it on target, what it does is you can see that it kind of follows the trajectory of it, and it does land, you know, nowhere near it, because I think the rocket range is maybe about 1,000 meters, but it does seem to follow the trajectory of where you are, you know, looking, and it does kind of sort out its own berth when it comes to the rocket. So it's not a guided missile. Instead, I think it's you set where the target is for the rocket, and it goes off that once it's fired, but then you can't control it after that period. That's what it seems to be happening with it. So I think that's really cool. It's a nice little addition to it. Will it get used that much? Probably not. But at the end of the day, it is, you know, a nice little thing on it. You can see those wonderful sparks from the guns once again, from these fast-firing, nice little guns. So that's the Isuzu. I'm happy to see it. The next thing that is on offer is the Sendai. Now, we talked about the Sendai before in a few videos, but this is very similar to another light cruiser that's in the game. Has 7 140s on it. Has access to 2 sets of dual-mounted 25s and a quad-mounted 13.2. Also 2 7.7s and 16 torpedoes, which are set up in these 2 mountings. So you have dual mountings, sorry. You have 4 dual mountings, and then you have a reload for them. So that's how that works. It has a ton of smokestacks. This thing is absolutely huge for its type. Has 450 crew. a ton of guns, and a decent bit of armor, 63.4mm and 25 here. The problem with this is the main gun fire rate is not very good, and at 5.0 it's going to get updated quite a lot, which is, sad for it. But it is nice to see an addition to the light cruiser line for the Japanese. Another machine which is getting added, the end of what I would class as the light cruiser line, which I wouldn't technically classed as a light cruiser, but it is being classed as one, is the Suzuya. Now the Suzuya, this is a monstrosity of a machine, and incredibly interesting to see. So the Suzuya, if you compare it to the Megami, is exactly the same, apart from one key difference. The IGN Megami, which is a heavy cruiser, has access to 5 sets of dual-mounted 200mm guns, whereas the Suzuya has access to 5 mountings of triple mounted 155mm guns. So this has 15 155mm on it, instead of the Megami, which has access to 10 of the 200s. That is the main difference between the two machines. If you have a look at the secondary armaments, they're exactly the same. Oh, sorry, they're not exactly the same, but they're very close, where the Megami has 4 5-inch dual sets, 4 dual 25s, whereas the Suzuya has 4 5-inch dual sets and 2 25s, and also 2 dual sets of 13.2, so it has slightly less AA armament, but the main thing is the fact that this machine here gets just access to 15 155s. And it's going to be interesting to see if the 155s, because you have more of them than the 200s, which one is going to be more useful. Is it going to be the one where you can put more shells into the air, or is it going to be the one which, you have larger guns? The Suzuya as well has access to HE from the base, only 36mm of pen, which is really bad, but the APHE does pen up to 300, which should be good enough to deal with most machines with the 155. The only problem is you don't have a lot of explosive mass with those shells. The 127s, which are the 5 inches, do have 25mm worth of pen on them, so not great, and only go up to 28mm with a HEDF round, so you're really not looking at a machine that's going to be really hurting a lot of ships with its secondaries. Instead, it's going to be maiming a lot of destroyers if they ever have the unfortunate, the unfortunate thing of having to deal with you. But it's really going to be mainly having to use its main guns to kill the larger ships. You can see all of the 155s turning right now. They are incredibly intimidating. And unfortunately, this destroyer is going to get a full broadside from this machine. But it is nice to see this one, and it shows that they are open to adding these larger ships with different configurations on them. Oh, isn't that meaty? Doesn't that look lovely? I really like that. I really like that. And because of my bad aiming, we were able to miss the machine by quite a lot. So yeah, it's one of those machines that can fire just an insane amount of shell power in the direction of an enemy. Yeah, goodbye, destroyer. It was nice to know you. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the naval part of stuff. Obviously nothing for China, Italy, France, or Sweden. Instead, we just have all of these larger ships for these other nations, and I've got to say, I'm really happy to see a lot of them, especially the destroyers. The destroyers are really cool. I'm surprised to not see anything for the Soviets, but maybe there is something hidden, which we'll eventually see. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, J. Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.